Welcome to Brown and White Ventures podcast. My name is Jim Aroune. I'm the general partner and co-founder of Brown and White Ventures, and it is a venture capital fund formed in 2024 to provide opportunity to new startups and to benefit St. Bonaventure University School of Business. It is built by St. Bonaventure University alumni. We are here on this podcast so that you get to learn not only more about Brown and White Ventures, but also the people it is committing to, the people who are helping to build it, the people who are interested in seeing its mission succeed. And that includes our guest on this episode of Brown and White Ventures podcast. He is the founder of Counsel Stack. It is a new AI for law firms, legal AI firm, Counsel Stack von Wooding. We're glad you are here with us.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Tell us how you get into this first. And I suppose before we even go there, we are recording this podcast in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Absolutely. This is where Counsel Stack has begun its journey. How'd you get here?
Yeah, so I'm a graduate of Duquesne University School of Law in 2023. While I was, in law school, I realized that there was a lot of potential for using the more advanced language models to conduct different legal analysis, things like case briefs and summaries and transcripts and timelines, some of the basic sort of fundamental building blocks of being a lawyer. And through my second and third year of law school, that's when GPT and the premier language models really started to take off. And it was about my third year when I realized that we should probably just go all in on this. It's not going away anytime soon. It's not getting more expensive. In fact, it's actually getting less expensive and easier to use over time. And so me and my co-founder, who's also an attorney here in Pittsburgh, we created a prototype that helped us study for the bar exam. And with that prototype, we decided to just keep it going. So after the bar exam, we just continued to work with attorneys around the Pittsburgh area. We figured out how they like to use technology, how they don't like to use technology, what their concerns and what the risks are. And from there, we've continually built out a platform, taking it day by day, talking to as many legal professionals and law students as we can along the way. We're happy to work with Brown and White Ventures moving forward.
So when I introduce this idea to people who know about Brown and White Ventures, they say, how did an attorney code an AI startup? Because that doesn't register initially, unless, of course, you were born after, 1992 or something like that, because everybody knows how to code.
Fair. Well, I don't know. It's still a highly sought after skill that I hope isn't going away anytime soon. The one thing I'll say is with the advancements of language models, they've actually gotten quite good at coding themselves. But you still have to know the lingo, and you still have to know the terms of art, for lack of a better phrase. You have to know the terms of art that are required to create, scalable and productive software. I was lucky enough that in my second and third year at Duquesne, they actually started what was an early version of what they're calling like their computer concentration or computer law, something like that. And so I was actually able to take a few coding courses while I was in law school, which was really, really helpful. I took coding for lawyers, which is a Python course. And I also had an opportunity to work in Silicon Valley after my first year of law school. And so when I was out there, I really got a firsthand glimpse into how massively more productive people can be who know how to use code and know how to write code and write small programs and scripts even. It doesn't have to be full-fledged enterprise-grade software. It can be little scripts and programs that help you automate certain parts of your life. I figure if engineers can do it, why can't lawyers do it? We're just as good as anybody else at reading and writing. And so if we can go and figure out what the code means in a GitHub repository or read some API documentation, if you do it enough, you can pick it up and you'll be able to figure it out piece by piece. So that's what I did.
So Counsel Stack does what for attorneys right now as you have launched it?
Yeah. So right now today, Counsel Stack is a legal research first platform. So traditionally, legal resources have been somewhat siloed. You would have to search through the U.S. code it's in its own sort of legal library, digital library online. You'd have to search through state statutes in their own separate library. You'd have to search through SEC regulations in its own separate repository as well. And so what happens is that doesn't really match up with real legal practice, especially for small and mid-sized firms that are offering a diverse range of legal services across, they span various practice areas and maybe even span various state law and federal law concepts. The real law doesn't work in a silo. It's very dynamic and very intertwined. And so what Counsel Stack does is it runs a bunch of parallel searches through various legal databases that are all filled with authoritative content. And it surfaces the most relevant results for the particular question that a lawyer asks. And so instead of spending 10, 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour or more, looking through all these different sources just to find that one snippet that you need, Counsel Stack is able to automate a lot of that for you in a minute or two. And so we have it accessible via web app and also via an email integration. And so it's very simple. You send us a legal research question and we send you an answer in 2 minutes or less with a full report explaining what every single citation in that report means and why that's relevant to your current question.
And I think there are a lot of folks who would think, as they hear this idea, well, that's already being done, isn't it? And you would answer, well, sure, it's been done, but you're doing it differently.
Sure, there are legal research companies out there. They've been around for a long time. They're very well trusted in the industry. They're very good at what they initially were proposed to do, which is be a law library online, a digital law library where you can flip through all the sources in their own silos and find what you need. There's nothing wrong with that. Those companies have done a phenomenal job aggregating that content and making it searchable on the internet so you can find actual laws, because most of the time government entities they're not working on search engine optimization, whereas these companies are. So they do help surface things that people would have a hard time finding otherwise. The way Counsel Stack is different is we're not bolting AI onto pre-existing architecture that's been around since the 1970s and 1980s. We've created the entire platform to be purpose-built for the next generation of AI-infused legal interpretation and research. So from a high level, that's the main difference is we've created the entire infrastructure from scratch to support this new wave of legal research where you have multiple autonomous agents working on your behalf, researching and finding insights for you.
Now, you are doing this at a time when the industry that you're introducing yourself to really doesn't like the idea of AI legal research. And I don't know what that could be like as far as, it sounds like that you have courts, you have judges, you have law firms that really have no interest in relying on legal AI, even though it seems inevitable. Your response to them is what?
Yeah, well, I think traditionally the legal industry has sort of, for lack of a better term, lagged a little bit behind new technological advances. But it's also one of the strengths of the legal industry is we are slow to change, and I think that's a good thing. You don't want a legal industry and legal practitioners that switch their tools every 2 months because the new shiny thing is out. So we understand that, and it's just like any other technology change that's happened in the legal industry. When email first came around, there were attorneys that refused to type any emails, and they had to handwrite everything and have their staff members help them handwrite things. At every single Wi-Fi, like at every single stage, there's been some level of resistance to the new technology. But that's because these are people who their license is on the line when they're practicing. Basically, every word that they write on a piece of paper for a client could come back and bite them at a later date. And so we completely understand the hesitancy to get into a new thing that attorneys aren't necessarily looking at a new tool only from the productivity standpoint. They're also looking at it as a new risk vector that exposes them to additional risk. And so when evaluating new technologies in a law firm, you have to consider both of those things. And so we understand that. And there will be some attorneys that are on one end of the spectrum where they don't even want to think about AI. And there will be attorneys who are so eager to adopt it because they want to launch a new practice or start a new law firm on their own, which is who we serve. And moving forward, I think that, again, it is not going anywhere. It'll become more trustworthy. It'll become more reliable. It'll become better and better at legal interpretation. So my hope is that over time, the external pressure that clients place on law firms to provide affordable and timely legal services will continue to increase as the public sees, hey, I can use free AI, commercial AI tools and get, maybe I can draft a contract that's 70% of the way there, 80% of the way there. Why would I go pay an attorney to write it from scratch, right? There's going to be that sort of slow transformation across society. And I also think there's potentially some building pressure internally within law firms where the decision makers at the law firm aren't necessarily the users of generative AI products like Counsel Stack, because their days of reviewing massive amounts of documents and drafting briefs and doing the sort of the ground level work, those days are far behind them. And so at a certain point, the decision maker is not actually the primary user of a tool like Counsel Stack. It's actually the younger paralegals and law clerks and young associates that are at the firm. And they're the ones doing the real work. And so there's, for lack of a better term, maybe like frustration or anticipation that hopefully we'll be able to use some of these tools to prioritize our work-life balance and make sure that we can still, be comfortable and have a life outside of work. And so that's what we see happening.
Brown and White Ventures is a $10 million venture capital fund formed by alumni of St. Bonaventure University. It intends to invest in 15 to 20 companies over the course of 2 to 3 years. It intends to focus on companies that are in medical and healthcare, in AI, technology, energy, and manufacturing. It will also focus on companies that have been founded by women and minorities. It will also seek to find companies that wish to commit to the footprint of St. Bonaventure University, that being the Western New York, upstate New York region, as well as Northern and Western Pennsylvania. It is founded by alumni of St. Bonaventure and also friends of the university with the expressed intent of contributing 10% of the net profits to St. Bonaventure University's School of Business. To learn more, head to brownandwhiteventures.com. We are back with Von Wooding of Counsel Stack, one of the companies in which Brown and White Ventures has invested. And part of your developing this as a startup is recognize that new generation in the legal system and providing a place and a tool by which they can not only serve communities they wish to do so, but do so on their own, because this will be, and I've heard someone say that it is a law firm in a box.
Absolutely. So one of the primary issues that we discovered when we were in law school and when we were initially creating Counsel Stack was quite simply that a lot of the attorneys, young attorneys that we spoke to at career days and other professional events and things like that, you could get the understanding that some of them liked what they were doing, but a lot of them didn't like what they were doing. And they don't really have a backup option. Once you join a firm, you kind of just, if you get a good gig, you stick with the firm and you stick with the people, whether you love the work or not. And so we found a lot of people that, colleagues and even friends, that they're good attorneys. They don't have the resources to start their own practice. So what ends up happening is they're working in a practice area that they don't really like at all. And so the quality of their work product over time, they produce high quality work product, but they don't enjoy producing it. When there might be an area of law that they really find interesting, that they'd be a stellar A+ attorney, if they were able to launch their own practice in that area, but they don't have the resources, they don't have the means. Luckily, over the last probably 10 years, there's been a slow decline in the amount of overhead expense and the amount of the barriers to entry to creating your own law firm. You no longer need a physical office space in all jurisdictions. You can run Zoom meetings, consultations, and things like that online. You now have personal assistants that can help you with things like email and drafting letters and things like that, very basic non-legal work with GPT and OpenAI and Gemini and all the commercial language models. You also now have the research component and document review and a place to source legal leads through Counsel Stack. And so we sort of see it as, here's an opportunity for those people that are on the fence, where they've been at a firm that they don't love for a while, or they're working in a practice area that they don't love for a while. This is an opportunity to have a full team and a full platform that can support you in venturing into this new practice area that you're considering opening. So that's why we exist, because we saw that far too often with our own friends and our own colleagues, where again, they get into a situation that's good but not great for them, and they have no backup plan. They have no way out. It's sort of like the golden handcuffs, if you've heard of that before.
So AI by its nature saves time, and that's easy enough to understand. But Counsel Stack, applying AI, saves time in other ways with other tools, as you've described.
Yeah, sure. So the fundamental, first thing that we focus on, because we found it was probably one of the hardest problems to focus on in the legal industry, so we started with that one first, was the actual research component. Research has to be good, or nobody will use any of the other platform unless your research is top notch. So we started with research, and you can save substantial amounts of time with research. It's actually almost hard to tell how much time you would save, because you'd have to go through the entire research process without Counsel Stack and then go through the entire process with Counsel Stack and compare the two. But it is a substantial amount of savings. We also offer document review, which means you can upload all of your files. It's multimodal, so you can upload image files, audio files. Relatively soon, we'll have video capabilities as well for criminal defense attorneys and stuff like that who work with large amounts of video data. So you can upload your files. When the files are uploaded, we tag them and we create vector embeddings, which is a widely used retrieval method in the AI industry. So you upload your files, we tag them, and we create these vector embeddings that allows you to easily find with plain English which documents you're looking for, because a lot of lawyers have piles and piles of untitled or randomly titled documents that is from client A, case file XYZ, from client B, totally other different documents. And so we make it really easy for you to just dump all your files into Counsel Stack. We relabel them, and we create these tags and summaries and things of that nature for the documents. So then when you're looking for your documents, you just type in plain English what kind of information you're looking for, what files you're looking for, even if they're named incorrectly, and we'll retrieve them correctly for you from your own separate secure database inside of Counsel Stack. And that, attorneys spend hours and hours just going through case files when they first sign a client and figuring out, what is this document? What is contained in this document? We don't even know what it's called. And so again, like that's a huge time savings opportunity. The document review, and it's sort of tangentially related to e-discovery, but at a smaller scale. That industry has been using NLP and preliminary versions of generative AI for years and years now. So that's not a monumental shift in the way that we review documents. Platforms have integrated that sort of capability for a while now, but we do see substantial savings in time and also quality, because people miss stuff all the time. So you have another set of eyes working with you at all times.
Von Wooding, Counsel Stack, AI for law firms and legal research and the courts. We're going to learn a couple more things about them after we hear about CAV. CAV builds cycling helmets for people who live and love to ride. CAV's also building something else, a new kind of manufacturing that operates like software, without inventory, light on capital. Its products made to order. CAV's commitment to health and safety and AI-driven design, all for cyclists to capture 3 selfies of their heads, submit them to CAV's production team, and let CAV's system create 108 measurements from those selfies to create an interior helmet shell absolutely designed for that individual. 3D printers create the custom helmet. It's part of a vertically integrated platform where CAV OS replaces factories with microfabs. There's a small footprint, automated units powered by AI, proprietary materials, and commodity hardware. CAV creates a product that's safe, fast, and fully custom fit, whether it's original Nova helmet for everyday riding or its new Rowan model, the lightest and fastest helmet it makes. CAV is a startup investment of Brown & White Ventures, and you can learn more about CAV and its cycling helmets at cav.com. Back with the founder of Counsel Stack, Von Wooding, and you play football. Speaking of helmets.
I did. I'm a retired linebacker. I played at Oberlin College. I had a great time, met a lot of great friends there. Really, really enjoyed myself.
What was it about football that carried you through to the realization that you wanted to be a founder?
Next play mentality.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, no, what's that mean for people who don't know?
Yeah. So a beautiful thing about football is your coaches will tell you. I started playing at a very young age in elementary school, and the first thing your coaches will tell you is, you inevitably get upset when a play doesn't go your way. You get knocked down, you get hit too hard, you make the wrong read and go in the wrong direction. Inevitably, it's going to happen. But the great part about football is there's always the next play, and you got to get up and you got to have a short memory about the failure that just happened, and you got to keep it moving. And you do that enough times over a long enough period of your life, and it really doesn't matter what knocks you down, because you just have that next play mentality, and you know that you can get up and get a win on the next play.
How has that worked for you in bringing about a brand new startup in the field you've chosen to this point?
I mean, I think it's definitely been helpful. A lot of my a lot of my team that has been helping with Counsel Stack also has connections to their former players that I've worked with in the past and things of that nature. So I think it builds a good culture in a startup, because a lot of creating a startup is about not just having the inertia to take off and launch, but how do you continue that momentum over the long term, because it's a long game, right? Like there's 4 quarters and then overtime in startup world. And so you're going to get knocked down. You're going to get on sales calls where people roast your product and they say it's garbage and they don't want to use it. You're going to deal with polite people. You're going to deal with impolite people. Again, just like everything else in life, there's going to be ups and downs. And so with that next play mentality, with the ability to completely eliminate that thought of the thing that didn't go your way and keep it moving forward, that's an integral part of, I would say, any startup founder's mentality. You have to adopt that mentality whether you want to or not. So it's been incredibly helpful. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
But no other linebackers in your crew?
So we have an advisor who was my best friend in college. He was a linebacker with me as well. He's a Carnegie Mellon graduate. So
this is Brown and White Ventures podcast, and my name's Jim Aroune here with Von Wooding. And Von, let's talk about consolidation of legal practice, the law industry. Your startup arrives as it continues to shrink.
Yeah.
And that means what for, as you mentioned earlier, the solo practitioner who wishes to strike out on their own, and perhaps doing that with Counsel Stack? Yeah.
So something that I found interesting is there's more lawyers every year. The amount of lawyers increases. Total population in the U.S. of lawyers increases pretty substantially, around like 1.5% each year. The number of law firms has been steadily declining. And so what we found is that less lawyers are creating the small to mid-sized firms, and there's been more consolidation in larger firms. This is due to a lot. It's due, in fact, to a lot of different factors. The number one factor I would say is probably the ABS ability in Arizona. There's a regulatory sandbox there that allows non-lawyer ownership of corporate legal firms, essentially. There's large firms like Morgan & Morgan that I believe have taken advantage of the ABS structure to raise a lot of money for advertising. There's marketing law firms such as Lofty that have taken advantage of the ability to market legal services nationally and then refer their clients that they get to various firms that are licensed in the different jurisdictions. There's also a full suite of other companies that fall in different areas of the legal market. There's low-level small claims firms that can operate out of there, and they're able to take on venture capital money and private equity money and scale their legal operations a lot more quickly than they would have been able to otherwise. And so we see the future of that maybe not being that great for the consumer, and maybe not being that great for individual practitioners, because they'll have less options and less opportunities to maybe go work at a small startup boutique firm, because once that vertical gets capitalized, once the personal injury category gets capitalized by 2 or 3 players, it might be a take-all market. And so you have a large firm like Morgan & Morgan. What happens to the solo practitioner that, I have a friend, and his dad's an attorney here in Pittsburgh, for example. He's been a personal injury attorney his whole life, and he does a phenomenal job. His clients love him. He cares for them. He goes to their house and, delivers the utmost level of client service. And unfortunately, one of the side effects, the negative side effects of having large corporate entities and a lot of institutional money in the legal industry is corporate entities just aren't, it's going to be difficult to provide that same level of personal care and human connection to every client that you run across. And as language models get better, and we'll be able to automate more of the monotonous legal research and repetitive tasks that take up a lot of attorneys' time, seems like the most important part is going to be human service, and that consolation when somebody's gone through a stressful and unfortunate legal situation. And the best people to deliver that service are solo practitioners, small firms that are specialized, because they have the time to genuinely care. They're not backed by some large VC firm, for example. And so that's why we created Counsel Stack, in part because we want those independent lawyers to still have the same caliber tools that the larger firms have, without having to enter into a 12-month contract for legal research software when they don't know how much it'll cost, and there's all these different factors that they have to consider. So that's why we're building a platform specifically designed for those ambitious solo practitioners, independent lawyers, legal plans, people that are trying to build their own brand as a lawyer.
And again, back to your origin story, you were studying for the bar and this came about through you. You have college students assisting you in your journey at this point. And what is it that they are doing and how is that helping your company move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we started the company when we were studying for the bar exam, and we realized like, okay, this is something we gotta capitalize on this opportunity. Let's run with it. And so we've partnered with a few law students across a couple different universities: Duquesne, Pitt, Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. And so we have a group of law students that we've been creating an internal benchmarking test for our platform to determine which practice areas, which jurisdictions is Counsel Stack actually the best at. Where do we excel? Where do we need to work on the platform to improve the accuracy? And so we've compiled a list it's a data set comprising more than 400 legal research questions created and graded by law students who are all high achieving, successful law students in their given institutions. And it spans, I think it's 20 plus jurisdictions, 20 plus practice areas. And so we've been working on that data set internally, and that's what we use to test our platform to ensure that it's actually up to the standard that we hold ourselves out to be. And another thing is there's a leading benchmark right now called Val's AI. I think they might even be a Y Combinator company based out of Silicon Valley. And so they're actually one of the few companies that's sort of spearheaded this movement towards public benchmarking. Let's have a test and let's test all these different companies against each other and see who actually has the best legal research capabilities in their platform. They've done things like summarization. They've done things like transcripts. They've done basic things like extraction, Q&A over document sets. But that's not real legal research. That's like fundamental stuff that honestly AI and NLP has been able to, we've been able to create summaries of documents for a long time now with AI. It's not the next wave. And so we're really looking forward to the opportunity of actually displaying our test results and comparing our platform's research capabilities to the top of the line, to the companies that have been entrenched in the industry for a long time. They have the funding, they have the manpower and the resources. We think that we can compete with them in a way, specifically with legal research. We think that our platform can be just as accurate as theirs, provide just as relevant context as theirs, and we're going to continue building it until we meet that requirement. So,
are you a lawyer getting into startups or a founder getting into law?
I would say I've always been more of a founder than a lawyer. Even through law school, I never really foresaw myself. I was more interested in the business of law, and I never really saw myself going to court or being a litigator. Transactional work is not really my strength either.
Does that hold you back as you present to prospective partners?
Potentially. I mean, I am a licensed attorney, so at the end of the day, I could go to court and I could present a case if I needed to. I can draft contracts and I can read legal language and understand it. So I never really saw myself as becoming a practitioner. I was much more interested in the business of law and the strategy of the legal industry and legal markets. And I realized that technology is the way to really get a competitive advantage in that space. And I thought, why not give tools to the incredible litigators that are out there and the law students that love being in court? I mean, I could try and change my personal, opinions on those things and my personal attitude towards it, or I could just build tools for the people that already love that stuff. And so that's what we did.
Well, Brown & White Ventures is all in with Von Wooding and Counsel Stack, one of the first companies that we invested in 2025. And we look forward to seeing what comes next for you and your company, and are excited to watch this evolution. It's already evolved in the time that we've started as partners in this way, and we look forward to seeing what happens next for you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yes, and we are glad you joined us here for the Brown & White Ventures podcast. My name is Jim Aroune, the producer of the Brown & White Ventures podcast today, none other than Denzel Gregg. We will look forward to seeing you here next time